It's time for Defending and Commending the Faith with Joe Mott, inviting the atheist, agnostic, and skeptic to examine for themselves the evidence for the Christian faith. We are all limited by what we do not know and by the things we think we know but are not true. Dr. Joe Mott earned his PhD at LSU and was a distinguished math professor at Florida State University for 38 years, helping to write 3 math textbooks and authoring over 30 research articles in math. He is now the host of this radio program, Defending and Commending the Faith. Here is Joe Mott.
In this program, I continue the discussion of facts and fictions about Jesus' life. I begin with fiction number 5. Jesus somehow avoided or survived the crucifixion. The Jewish Sanhedrin condemned Jesus to die, and the Romans crucified him. But according to the Qur'an, the holy book for Islam, quotes, "They slew him not, nor crucified him, but it appeared so unto them," end quotes. Consequently, many Muslims think someone else was crucified instead of Jesus. Some have even claimed that a twin brother was actually the one crucified. Some Muslims and other religions agree Jesus was crucified and was buried in the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea. But some of them contend he survived the ordeal, having merely fainted on the cross, and he regained consciousness in the tomb. Remember, Jesus had someone else carry his cross, being weak from the beatings he endured, and he endured even more trauma on the cross. Then in the tomb, in his weakened state, somehow he was able to release himself from the burial garments, move the heavy stone closure of the tomb from the inside, managed to overwhelm the guards, and then disappear from sight. That scenario is what is called the swoon theory. In addition, Michael Baigent, a New Zealand writer who published a number of popular works questioning traditions about the life of Jesus, asserts that Mark reports that Joseph of Arimathea asked Pilate for permission to bury Jesus' body. That's found in Mark 15, verse 43. Then Baigent claims Mark uses the Greek word soma for body, which he believes means a living body and not a corpse. Furthermore, Baigent concludes Jesus' survival is revealed right there in the gospel account of Mark's gospel. That is the fiction. Now let us consider the fact. Jesus actually died on the cross. First, Michael Baigent is simply mistaken regarding the word soma. It can refer to either a living body or to a corpse. For example, that is how soma is used in Luke chapter 17, verse 37, in Acts 9, verse 40, and in Romans 8, verse 10. Second, the claim that someone other than Jesus died on the cross has no historical evidence to support it. And historians can offer contrary evidence that he did die. Friends and family, including Mary, Jesus' mother, Mary the wife of Clopas, Mary Magdalene, Joseph of Arimathea, the owner of the tomb, and the Apostle John, all witnessed Jesus' crucifixion. They would have recognized it was Jesus being beaten, and they could confirm that Jesus was one of the 3 persons crucified on the cross that day. Third, Pilate verified that Jesus was in fact dead by consulting the centurion who oversaw Jesus' crucifixion. That centurion, well experienced in crucifixions, easily confirmed Jesus was dead when he was taken down from the cross. Therefore, Jesus' death refutes the swoon theory. Fourth, we know that when Jesus' side was pierced with a spear, immediately blood and water came out. That's found in John chapter 19, verse 34. Medical experts have ascertained that this meant that the spear induced a fatal injury to Jesus in the form of cardiopulmonary effusion or cardiac tamponade, and showed Jesus was likely already dead. At any case, had Jesus not been dead, the piercing of his heart would have finished the job. Fifth, even the skeptical member of the Jesus Seminar, John Dominic Crossan, has stated, quotes, Jesus' death by execution under Pontius Pilate is as sure as anything historical can be. End quotes. Now let us turn to fiction 6. The resurrection of Jesus is nothing more than a myth or a legend. In the Handbook of Christian Apologetics, the authors Peter Kreeft and Ronal Tacelli say, quotes, there is probably no word that causes more confusion in biblical studies than the word myth, end quotes. According to G.B. Caird, in his book, The Language and Imagery of the Bible, myth is used in 9 distinct senses. Kreeft and Tacelli say that for their less technical purposes, it is sufficient to focus only on 6 of the 9 senses. To me, some of these descriptions are too vague for me to identify the senses, so I will deal only with 3 senses where Christians might be willing to agree that the Bible contains myth in the sense of the first 2, but not in the sense of the third. First, the literal sense of myth, taken from the Greek word mythos, is simply a sacred story. This sense says nothing about its truth and nothing concerning its historicity. Second, a more technical and narrow sense of myth, where the storyteller explains that it is not necessarily meant to be taken as literally true. These stories belong to the literary genre that includes fantasy. I imagine this sense being used when an adult is telling stories to grab the attention of young children in order to get their attention and control their behavior, with the hope of giving them a wow experience. Caird would say that talking animals like the serpent in Genesis 3 would be a myth in this sense. Also, stories that explain natural facts by analogy would fit in this category. I take it that a parable is a narrative with a moral or spiritual lesson. So it may be that Jesus' parables would fit in this category. Third, a popular sense is simply, quotes, something that didn't really happen, end quotes, or something that isn't real, like Santa Claus or a mirage. Here, myth is contrasted with truth or fact. This is the sense in which many skeptics are concerned about in the stories in the Bible, especially the miracle stories. They would ask, did the miracle stories really happen, or are they only myths, that is, mere fictional human inventions? For Christian doctrines, the deity of Jesus Christ, the reliability of the Bible, the possibility of miracles, and the verity of the resurrection all stand or fall together. Anti-Christian skeptics are particularly opposed to all four topics. Those who do not believe that Christ physically rose from the dead disbelieve for two reasons. First, miracles like that do not really happen. And second, the Bible is a myth, not history. The key sticking point for them is the question of the supernatural, something above and beyond the laws of nature. Since the time of the Enlightenment, naturalism has been the major antagonist of the Christian faith. Naturalism's central claim is that nothing exists outside the material, mechanistic, natural order. Naturalists can be divided into two categories. First, physicalists, people who insist that everything can be reduced to physical or material entities. Or second, those thinkers that deny what the physicalists profess, yet they deny the possibility of any divine intervention into the natural order. The deists of the 18th century were naturalists in this second sense. So too would certain liberal Christian theologians of the 20th century, such as Paul Tillich and Rudolf Bultmann. A naturalist believes that the physical universe is the sum total of all that is, the whole show, so to speak. Carl Sagan, originator of the TV program Cosmos, says, "The universe is all that is, or ever was, or ever will be." In the naturalist view of things, Christian supernaturalism is false by definition, as are miracles and the existence of the God of the Bible. Most skeptics would say that the belief in the resurrection could be no more true than Mother Goose's nursery rhymes. Fact. Evidence strongly suggests Jesus' resurrection was a real fact. Number one, the first evidence is the Bible. It is replete with miracles, from the creation of the universe to the second coming of Christ, from Moses at the burning bush to Daniel in the lion's den, from the virgin birth to the resurrection of Jesus. Miraculous events fill the pages of Scripture. The truth of Christianity depends entirely on the truth of the miracle of the resurrection. If the resurrection cannot be evidentially substantiated, then Christianity would be a hoax. Second, my challenge to those opponents to the resurrection is this. If it can be evidentially verified that Jesus really did rise from the dead, are they willing to renounce their opposition and become Jesus' disciples? For if he really did rise from the dead, that validates his claim to be divine. For resurrection from death is certainly beyond mere human capability, and his divinity validates everything else he said, for God cannot lie. Jesus affirmed the truth of the Old Testament, and his disciples, or close associates of the disciples, wrote the New Testament. So the truth of the resurrection is absolutely crucial for the truth of the Bible. Allow me to close this episode by referring to a story told by Charles Stanley, the former pastor of First Baptist Church of Atlanta, Georgia. Stanley writes in the book More Stories of the Heart, quotes, "A farmer had some puppies for sale. He made a sign advertising the pups and nailed it to a post on the edge of his yard. As he was nailing the sign to the post, he felt a tug on his overalls. He looked down to see a little boy with a big grin and something in his hand. "Mister," he said, "I want to buy one of your puppies." "Well," said the farmer, "these puppies come from fine parents and cost a good deal." The boy dropped his head for a moment, then looked back up at the farmer and said, "I've got 39 cents. Is that enough to take a look?" "Sure," said the farmer. And with that he whistled and called out, "Dolly, here, Dolly." Out from the doghouse and down the ramp ran Dolly, followed by 4 little balls of fur. The little boy's eyes danced with delight. Then out from the doghouse peeked another little ball, this one noticeably smaller. Down the ramp it slid and began hobbling in an unrewarding attempt to catch up with the others. This pup was clearly the runt of the litter. The little boy pressed his face to the fence and cried out, "I want that one," pointing to the runt. The farmer knelt down and said, "Son, you don't want that puppy. He will never be able to run and play with you the way you would like." With that, the boy reached down and slowly pulled up one leg of his trousers. In doing so, he revealed a steel brace running down both sides of his leg, attaching itself to a specially made shoe. Looking up at the farmer, he said, "You see, sir, I don't run too well myself, and he will need someone who understands."
Thank you for listening to Defending and Commending the Faith with Joe Mott, a production of Wave 94 Radio in Tallahassee, Florida. If you have any questions or comments for Joe, please forward them to Doug Apple at Wave94 at this email address, dougapple@wave94.com. And be sure to join us every Monday evening at 6:45 p.m. on Wave 94 and subscribe through your favorite podcast app. Defending and Commending the Faith with Joe Mott.